struggle for fairness, equality, peace, and justice. So thank you very much for coming. I'm really happy with tonight's panel. Hawaii J20 has been wanting to do a panel on the elections and voting for a long time, and we wanted to wait until the Hawaii legislative session was over and we were in the midst of the midterm. So raise your hands, how many of you have already voted? Your ballots are in. Yes? For those of you who are unable to vote, we apologize that we live in a world where you don't get a say in the places that you actually live and study and work. For those of you who do have the right to vote but have not yet voted, please make sure to get your ballots in. It's going to be a really crucial election. So there's several issues that we urgently need to deal with, and these issues can be really contradictory, which makes them difficult to understand how to approach them. So we both have an effort by the Trump administration and by some local actors here in Hawaii as well to undermine people's faith in the integrity of the election. And at the same time, we have efforts to undermine the integrity of the elections. Right? So it's really like, you don't want to scare people and say the elections aren't fair and there's no integrity to them. And you want to be prepared, as all good Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are, you want to be prepared for the attacks to the elections, right? So the first thing I think that we need to contend with is how Trump and some local actors are sowing doubt about election integrity here in Hawaii and at the federal, in all of the different states and at the federal level. So in last week's primetime address, Trump repeated for the umpteenth time the lie that the 2020 election was stolen from him. Why does he keep doing this? I don't think it's only because he's a narcissist and he just can't stand losing. It's because it allows him to sow doubts about the outcomes of future elections, the outcomes of the 2026 elections, that the GOP are very likely to lose badly, right? And in that same address, and true to his anti-immigrant political core, Trump claimed that almost 300,000 non-citizens cast a ballot in 2020. This is, of course, another lie. However, that lie has legs, and it's going to figure large in the 2026 election. Trump recently sent a letter to every state's election official warning them that they will be held criminally liable if a non-citizen votes. Since non-citizen voting is a non-issue, these letters are not about finding non-citizens who are voting. It's about intimidating state election officials and creating the pretext to reject states' election results that don't go Trump's way, under the guise that state elections that don't go his way are under criminal investigation. He tried this in 2020, if you recall, and was only stopped by people with ethics, something sorely lacking in today's White House or in the GOP-controlled Congress. In addition, this week, DHS Secretary Mullen threatened state election officials with criminal charges if they do not use the SAVE database. SAVE stands for Systemic Alien Verification for Entitlement. This database has been proven to have a high error rate that could disenfranchise voters. The database regularly misidentifies eligible voters, particularly naturalized citizens. To say all of this is madness would be an understatement of gigantic proportions. Fortunately, a court order currently blocks DHS from using the SAFE database to police most states' voter rolls, but nonetheless, Mullen has threatened state election chiefs with criminal charges if they don't use the database, so another intimidation tactic. We know that all of this is really not about election security, so we need to talk about the actual threats to election integrity that these doubts are paving the way for. Trump effectively dissolved the Election Assistance Commission, or the EAC, by firing all of its remaining commissioners. So we don't have an EAC anymore. This was his first act following the Supreme Court's decision on slaughter that gave the president a freer hand to remove officials at independent federal agencies. I think a chill went down my spine when right after that Supreme Court decision, that was the first thing he did, was fire all of the election commissioners. Some of the major tasks of the EAC was to distribute grants to states for their elections and to certify voting machines. These all now face severe disruptions. In addition to all of that, Trump is trying to federalize the elections by claiming the executive branch's authority over state election procedures. He's trying to federalize the ballots, he's trying to federalize the voting machines, and the DHS secretary announced this week, along with the Department of Commerce, that they would soon be making, quote, new security enhancements on voting machines mandatory by conditioning states' grants on their adoption. Credible observers are concerned that Trump might try to seize voting machines, something that he has said he regrets not doing during the 2020 election. If we recall, one of the reasons that Trump was unable to actually nullify Biden's victory and his loss was Attorney General Bill Barr, of all people, Attorney General Bill Barr's willingness to publicly state that there was no election interference in the 2020 election. It is highly unlikely that current acting Attorney General Todd Blanche is going to have the courage or the ethics to do that. Indeed, repeating the lie that the 2020 election was stolen for Trump is a precondition to being a cabinet secretary. The significance of this is that it is highly unlikely that anyone who is currently working for Trump will stand up to him when he claims the 2026 or 2028 election results are fake. Todd Blanche has already sued states to get records of their voter rolls. He's also tried to get specific information about election officials in Georgia. And while these have been overturned by the courts, it's an indication of how far Blanche is willing to go as Trump's AG. So the third issue that we need to deal with when we're talking about voting and elections is the quashing of dissent and the repression of dissenters. We've seen an enormous arrest of people exercising their First Amendment rights to protest. Hundreds of people have been arrested during immigration sweeps and accused of crimes like assaulting or interfering with law enforcement. Most of these cases have fallen apart under judicial scrutiny, often because the statements made by arresting officers were debunked by video footage, so keep your cameras handy. But they have had their intended chilling effect. Arrests, even without convictions, quash dissent. Trump has also stepped up arrests and public condemnation of scientists. This spring, the FBI detained a former aide to Fauci. Last month, 2 scientists studying the Ebola virus were arrested by customs officials, even though at an airport in Detroit, even though the specimens that they were carrying were inactive and carried 0 risk. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky ordered their former boss, the 2 scientists who were arrested, their former boss was Anthony Fauci, to appear before a Senate committee alleging that he had lied to Congress about the COVID-19 pandemic origins. So this isn't only about opportunistically going after scientists so that the snake oil that Trump and his cabinet members try to sell has a bigger audience. It's about trying to redefine reality and to tell us that the truth is only what Trump tells us it is. The fourth thing that we need to deal with is disenfranchisement and the stealing of our votes. Trump is trying to steal our votes by disenfranchising, in particular, women, seniors, people with disabilities, rural voters, and people with low incomes. The Supreme Court, of course, has just about killed the Voting Rights Act. giving Trump and GOP-controlled states the right to reimpose racist redistricting. And then there's the SAVE Act, which, if passed, as Trump demands, but the filibuster is currently protecting us from, the SAVE Act would require the United States citizens to show documents like a passport or a birth certificate to register to vote. What's the problem, as the GOP keeps saying, right? The problem is that research shows that more than 21 million US citizens lack ready access to these documents, right? The problem is that roughly half of US citizens don't have a passport, and millions lack access to a paper copy of their birth certificate. The problem is that younger voters and non-white voters would be disproportionately disenfranchised. And disenfranchised is a fancy way of saying your vote is stolen. You don't get to vote. Likewise, millions of women whose married names aren't on their birth certificate or their passports would face extra steps just to vote. So not only would the SAVE Act disenfranchise millions of eligible voters, it would also place a massive unfunded burden on state and local election officials. It would expose those officials to significant legal risk. The bills would lead the SAVE Act bill, the bills to have a SAVE Act would leave it up to local officials to decide whether a voter who lacks one of the documents has done enough to prove their citizenship. So officials who make an honest mistake could face civil and criminal penalties. An election official could even be punished for registering an eligible US citizen just for failing to collect all the right paperwork at the right time. So the last issue is us. Hawaii has a dismal voter turnout rate. We need to get the vote out. All of us need to get people to vote. I think probably most of us in this room, I saw most of your hands up, vote, and we vote early, and we vote every opportunity that we have. We need to pass along that practice to everyone that we encounter. And perhaps a motivating question for us is this: if we could go back to the months before the 2024 general election, what more could we have done to ensure that Trump was not reelected? How could we have convinced people who felt, quite rightly in my opinion, that key policies of the Biden administration were extremely problematic, but to convince people who felt that way to nonetheless vote to prevent Trump from once again taking the reins of state power and using them to implement a fascist agenda? How do we convince people who still feel this way, right? It doesn't matter who you vote for, they're all the same. I don't like the policies of this Democrat or that Democrat. How do we convince people who still feel this way that voting for the lesser evil is not evil, right? That weakening Trump gives us more political room to maneuver, because this is not just another politician in power. This is a fascist that is implementing a fascist agenda. And we have a vote on whether that continues or not. Anti-authoritarian activists from around the world, people who I've met and spoken with from Turkey, right? People from all over the world have been telling us for a long time that it is more difficult to organize, resist, and build a better world under an authoritarian regime than it is under a liberal democratic administration. Right? It actually does matter that we vote, and that we always vote against the candidate who will do more harm than all the rest. So to conclude, one thing is clear. The upcoming midterm elections will be remembered as the point when we either weakened fascism or we allowed it to gain strength. The choice is ours. And the world is watching. Because what Trump does to us here in the United States doesn't just stay in the United States. His wars, his policies, and his supports for fascists travels the entire world. So the entire world is literally watching what we in the United States will do to stop fascism. So tonight's speakers will delve deeper into some of the issues that I've highlighted and bring light on others that I've not touched upon, all with the hope that we're not going to sit back and be content with only criticizing what's going on, but we're also going to get the vote out to stop this in its tracks. So please join me in welcoming our speakers. Our first speaker will be Senator Karl Rhoads, who is the Hawaii State Senator for the district we are in, District 13. Our second speaker will be Judith Wong, who is the State President of the League of Women Voters here in Hawaii. And then we have a special guest that we will introduce later, Scott Nago, Hawaii's Chief Electoral Officer. So please join me in welcoming Senator Rhoads.
Well, I'm not really sure I need to say anything else. I think that pretty well summed it up. So if I can, let me know if you can't hear me. I think I'm close enough to the mic. Everybody can hear okay in the back there? Yes. Okay. So the organization asked me to talk about three more or less separate topics. One is voter suppression. The other was to make some predictions about what I thought would happen, and then also a little bit about Act 11, which is my bill that was takes a dent out of Citizens United. It doesn't overturn Citizens United, but it is will have the effect of. Well, I'll tell you about it later. That's the third thing I'll talk about. So MAGA voter suppression. I mean, it's obvious that they are trying to suppress votes. And I will go, most of the time I spend on this, I'll spend on how they're doing it, the methods and modalities that they're using. But I also wanted to discuss briefly why. And we can talk about this at greater length if we have time and people want to ask questions. But the short answer is MAGA doesn't want to give up power to non-whites and women. And I'll say that again just because that's the thesis. The short answer is MAGA doesn't want to give up power to non-whites and women. There are several caveats and exceptions, but for now, I want to talk about one. I've noticed this in my own relatives, how otherwise nice people support Trump. Probably most of you have experienced this at some point or another where you're looking at this person going, why are you a Trump supporter? You sound like... Sorry. That's what I was a little concerned about because I'm tall enough that I can't. I'll try it this way. Is that better? Yes. Okay. How is it that why do nice people support Trump? There's a group or a class of people that don't fall neatly into the general rule I just described. I have relatives who I have no reason to believe are racist or sexist, but they fully support Trump. They're Christians who act like Christians. They help people out when they need it, and they try to follow the golden rule, but they still support Trump wholeheartedly. I've been puzzling over this paradox for years. I have some theories, but I have to admit at the end of the day, they aren't completely convincing, but I'm going to share them with you anyway, and you can decide whether they make any sense or not. One of my favorite movies of all time is Casablanca. It looks like some of you here might be old enough to have seen it. For those who know the movie, there's a scene where Louis asks why Rick came to Casablanca. Rick says, I came for the waters. And Captain Renault says, the waters? What waters? We're in the desert. And Rick says, I was misinformed. I suppose it's possible that my relatives and others like them are simply misinformed. If you only listen to Fox or Newsmax, it is conceivable you really don't know all the vile things Trump has done. It's the power of media, and the more networks that are run by MAGA supporters, the more likely this scenario becomes. I think, and I know I'm on dangerous ground here, but I think there is also a tendency for people to use race as a proxy for culture. even though all races have various cultures, to outsiders, the other race's culture can appear monolithic, and it's not their own. And the foreignness bothers them. You're in America, you should do the way Americans do things, which of course includes speaking English. But the corollary to that is that non-whites who adopt white mores can be accepted by whites. This is really dangerous to talk to in front of a sociologist, I just want to say. I did get an A in my one sociology class. So it may be that my relatives can accept all the races that make up the United States on a personal level, as long as they conform to white American social rules. What they do seem to have a harder time with is accepting that the overall system is changing to reflect the mores and rules of other cultural groups. So maybe they aren't racists in the historic, all other races are inferior kind of way, but instead are culturalists instead. They don't want the culture to change, and they view white culture as superior. Now, whether that actually makes any difference in practicality, I don't know, but it does seem to me that there's this strange, I think it's a paradox that I can't fully explain. All right, so I'll turn to the meat of the topic, which is what MAGA is doing to suppress votes. Redistricting. Gerrymandering has been in use in the U.S. since at least 1812. That's when Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry redrew state Senate maps in such a way that one was shaped like a salamander. And the Boston Gazette coined the term gerrymander, just in case you wonder where that word came from. It's kind of a funny story. Computers, of course, have made gerrymanders much easier and more effective. Typically, the gerrymandering occurs shortly after the census has been conducted. What is unusual about this year is all the off-year redistricting. There's nothing that says you can't do it, but it does show a certain desperation on MAGA's part because they control the House under the maps that they are replacing. So they've already won the election in 2024, but they're changing the maps because they're afraid they're going to lose. Having said that, MAGA probably will gain 10 seats, other things being equal than they have now. Fortunately, other things are not equal, and the Democratic Party is favored to take control of the House despite the redistricting. The second one that I'd like to talk about for a minute has already been discussed to a certain extent, and I think when Mr. Nago comes up, he'll have even more detailed answers than I do, but trying to restrict voting by mail. As part of this effort, Trump's Department of Justice, I use the term loosely, has been demanding that states turn over unredacted voter information that is not already public. Hawaii and Mr. Nago refused to hand over the information, and the Department of Justice has sued for this data. To date, the states that have refused have won 17 straight lawsuits, one just yesterday. No judge has ruled in favor of Trump's demand for the sensitive voter information. Many other states have agreed to turn over their unredacted voter information. Mostly, these are the red states. The other part of this effort is a Trump executive order that purports to require the Postal Service to refuse to mail any ballots that are not on a federally approved list. And a nationwide injunction has already been issued against the proposed rule, but it's being appealed by the Trump administration. Last Friday, a 3-judge panel of the federal D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals put a pause on the injunction. So for the non-lawyers in the room, an injunction means you can't do something you're enjoined from doing something. So a pause on an injunction means that you can keep doing whatever it is that the court told you couldn't do, at least temporarily. So we're not out of the woods on that one just yet. We'll see how it goes. The other way that they're trying to suppress votes, has already been discussed to a certain extent, it's the safeguard. The name for the technical name for the SAVE Act is the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. I think more accurately it should be Stop All Voting for Everyone Act. And I'm sorry for the joke, but that's the best I could do. It would require anyone registering to vote, and more importantly, or updating their voter registration to present documentary proof of citizenship in person. Usually this means a passport or birth certificate. And to make the bill even more ridiculous, the birth certificate has to have your current legal name on it. So for the 84% of women who change the name upon marriage, a birth certificate won't do. To make it even worse, at least some versions of the bill don't offer a workaround. If a woman applies for a passport, as opposed to registering to vote, she can provide a birth certificate and a marriage license. or an old passport or a court order. But that's not, I don't, there's been several versions of it. I don't know if it's in the current one, but there have been in certain versions of it, there is no workaround. Which of course means women, a big chunk of women just wouldn't be able to vote, period. The SAVE Act requires documentation every time you update something as simple as your address. So a few years, I live in Honolulu Tower, as some of the rest of you do, and we moved from the 9th floor to the 27th floor, and we changed our voter registration in due time. And that you would have to go in person with your birth certificate or a passport and change it. I mean, it's just insane. And it would appear that this bill will hurt MAGA more than Democrats, at least on its face. So in 7 states, and I'm going to read them because you'll get the idea pretty quickly: West Virginia, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Oklahoma, less than a third of residents have passports. Less than a third. So lots of legwork to get yourself registered. There are only 4 states where 2/3 of citizens have a passport, and they're blue: New York, Massachusetts, California, and New Jersey. In conservative states, an even higher percentage of women change their names when they get married. So not only does MAGA not want women to vote, they don't want conservative women to vote either. So I'm looking at this, looking for a nefarious purpose here. I can think of a couple things. One would be that if they put in these really tough standards, then maybe the states selectively enforce them and apply them only in liberal areas or minority areas. But they have this super high standard on the books so that they can keep people that they don't want to vote. Or maybe it throws the 2026 election into such chaos because there's no way, even if everybody made a good faith effort to get their birth certificate and a passport and take it in person to Mr. Nago's office, they just sent out 546,000 ballots a week ago, I think. If all 546,000 of those people descended on Pearl City and tried to register to vote, it would be chaos, and I think maybe that might be the point. If we have an election that's just not happening, then Trump would view that as a good thing. The other alternative, which is absolutely a possibility, it might just be stupidity. You can't count on your enemies to be stupid, but when they are, it's generally pretty helpful. One last area of trying to suppress what I term general doubt and intimidation. Trump's continued attacks on mail-in voting and wild claims about elections being thrown by illegal votes is of course intended to discourage people from voting. All his threats to send ICE to voting places is meant to discourage voting, especially from non-whites. It would be illegal to send armed federal agents to polling places, and whether Trump really intends to do so is anyone's guess, but the mere suggestion is meant to keep people away from the polls. So, what can we do? Much of this is being decided in court. One thing you can do is join Democracy Docket. It's run by Mark Elias, an attorney who has litigated numerous election-related lawsuits against the Trump administration, and by the way, won almost all of them. Democracy Docket also runs a very useful website that has up-to-date information on the status of all the election litigation. I think you already said this, we can vote like our lives depend on it. If you mail your ballot or put it in a drop box, follow up and be sure it was received and that there are no problems. And I just found out this week because I got an email saying your ballot has been received, it's being processed. But the Office of Elections does send out emails or texts or calls you if you've signed up for that, and that's very useful. If you haven't signed up yet, you can go to elections.hawaii.gov, go to the link on the right called Sign Up for Ballot Notifications, and then a few days after you've submitted your ballot, you can just check in and see whether it's being processed or not. And if there's a problem, then you can contact the Office of Elections. Can I say that, or is it the Office of Elections or is it the county clerks? Or does it matter? County clerks, I'm sorry about it. Doesn't matter. Elections will take care of it too. I would also suggest voting early. Ballots in Hawaii have to be received, not postmarked by 7 p.m. on the last day of the election. It's not like your tax returns where it just has to be postmarked. It has to be there. So that's August 8th for the primary and November 3 for the general. If any of Trump's attempts to subvert the election in Hawaii are successful, do whatever you have to do to get your vote in. Chief Elections Officer of Hawaii, sorry to quote you while you're sitting here, but has already stated that he's under a legal obligation to have free and fair elections this year at the regularly scheduled times. If you receive your ballot by FedEx instead of a mail, be prepared for that possibility. So like you get a FedEx package, you know, like, what is this? Just be sure it's not your ballot. If you have to take a day off work to stand in line for 8 hours because the USPA stopped delivery of all ballots, be prepared to do that. Also be prepared to demand a provisional ballot if you are told you're not registered and you know you are. Don't forget that in Hawaii you can register to vote and vote on the same day if all else fails. Trump knows that if the Democrats take back even one house of Congress, that his risk of going to jail goes way up. MAGA is pulling out all the stops to steal this election, and we have to pull out all the stops to be sure we have a fair one. Notice, I don't say pull all the stops to win. We have to pull all the stops to be sure it's fair. This year, I'm actually pretty sure that if it's fair, we will win, but that's kind of either here or there in the broad scheme of things. Another thing you can do is participate in election commission meetings. The election commission is kind of like what it sounds like. They deal with election issues. Their big power, their big authority is that they can hire and fire the chief election officer. Attend virtually or in person to balance out the MAGA lies. They just say the same things over and over and over and over and over again, despite the fact that all it's been debunked. They've had several lawsuits where they've lost, same facts, they just keep bringing them up. So this requires a thick skin, but the commissioners need to know that not everyone accepts MAGA's claims that elections are rigged against Republicans. Another thing you can do that's not only about fighting voter suppression, but it does help, and that's to do in swing districts. This not only helps their campaign, but specific to voter suppression, it allows them to fight the legal battles their specific campaign might need to fight. I've been giving my dollars to just one candidate. Her name is Marie Glusenkamp Perez. She's the incumbent Democrat in a Republican-leaning district in southwest Washington State. Her website is marieforcongress.com. I'm sure she's way more conservative than me, but we need to hold the marginal seats if we're going to take the House back. There are, of course, other battleground districts that I can point you to if you want to contact me after. My campaign email is the very original Karl at karlrhoads.org. For congressional races, you can give $3,500 for a primary campaign and $3,500 to a general election. If you're planning to go over the $3,500 mark, I check with the campaign to be sure they can still take primary money since most primaries have already taken place. They might be able to, I just don't remember the federal rules well enough, and I didn't have time to look it up. The other interesting thing to note, interesting and hypocritical I would say, is MAGA is not challenging the primary election. Many primaries are already completed, and apparently voting by mail in primaries is accurate, but votes are going to be stolen in the general election, even though it's exactly the same system. This is apparently similar to the logic that says MAGA candidates elected on the same day with the same ballots where Biden was elected. Those MAGA candidates are legitimate winners, but Biden was not. Same day, same ballot, same process. Biden was illegitimate. The MAGA guys who won are legitimate. Bottom line, the primary ballot that you should have gotten already will likely be processed without challenge, but brace yourself for the general. So a couple of things that the legislature and I have already done to try to, well, I'll talk about them. I passed 2 bills this last legislative session that will help avoid the most serious consequences of MAGA election denialism here in Hawaii. Senate Bill 2143 puts in place an order of succession for the chief election officer. Before this law went into effect, only the chief election officer had statutory authority to certify elections. I worry that if he were fired, which the Election Commission, as I mentioned before, has the power to do, there might be a challenge to the certification, and the chaos is exactly what the Trumpies would love to have. Another bill I passed, SB 2466, mandates that chief election officer can only be fired for cause, and until this bill went into effect, the chief election officer was at will. The commission could fire him for any or no reason. This bill will help to avoid the chaos and unnecessary firing of a chief election officer might cause, say it happened a week before the general election. All right, the second thing that I asked to talk about a little bit were my predictions. So maybe some of you remember Niels Bohr, who was a Danish scientist, and one of his famous sayings, I think he probably didn't say it in English, he probably said it in Danish, but translates to, it's difficult to predict things, especially the future. So you can take my predictions with that caveat. But my guess is that Chief Election Officer Nago is right. The courts will not alter our fundamental mail-in system, and our elections will go on without major incident. If he's not right, he understands that extraordinary measures will have to be taken to fulfill his legal duties. These include mailing with private delivery services, opening more voter service centers, and/or providing more drop boxes. The legislature and the governor will likely have to backfill financially, as this could be a large, and I might say completely unnecessary expense that has not been budgeted for. In other states run by Democrats, my guess is that all the MAGA legal challengers will fail, and in the end, threats and intimidation will be the main problems. Those will dampen turnout, and it's a problem, but I think in general, those elections will be okay. In states and other states run by Republicans, I just don't know. Many of them have turned over their voter rolls to the U.S. Department of Justice, with the quotes around it again. My guess is the Department of Justice, maybe more aptly called the Department of Injustice at the moment, will find very little overlap. I don't think they'll find very little overlap between the state's voter rolls and their list of deportable people, which is what they claim to be going after. But will that stop them from removing legitimate voters who happen to live in Democratic neighborhoods? Unfortunately, I think that is a real possibility. Those voters need to follow my suggestions above and demand a provisional ballot if they're told they're not eligible. Litigation may ensue, and that's where law firms associated with organizations like Democracy Pocket come in. And backing up for a second on ways to help, another way you can help is to volunteer with various nonpartisan voter protection hotlines to assist voters in those states. One such group is called Election Protection, that is led by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, and also Common Cause is leading. The website is protectthevote.net. It's in the protectthevote.net if you're interested in helping that way. Okay, those are my bold predictions. Finally, I'll talk just a little bit about my artificial entities bill that became Act 11, SB Senate Bill 2471. Of all the bills I've worked on during my 20 years in the legislature, this is easily the most important. SB 2471 prohibits artificial entities like corporations and labor unions from spending to support political campaigns from their general funds. Doesn't mean they won't be able to spend money on elections, but they can't just take it straight out of their general checkbook. Unions and corporations will still be able to solicit their membership or employees and spend money on elections through traditional political action committees, just like they did before 2010. 2010. The significance of 2010 is that's when the Citizens United case was decided. These prohibitions apply whether the artificial entity was formed under Hawaii law or in another state and is doing business here. Artificial entities are creatures of state law, either Hawaii or another state. States have always retained the power to control what these artificial entities can and cannot do. For years, states have generally granted corporations, limited liability companies, and other artificial entities the same powers that humans have, and have also given these entities benefits humans do not receive, like eternal life, special tax treatment, and probably most importantly, limited liability for investors. Unfortunately, some of these artificial entities have taken advantage of the benefits states have given and to spend money in politics to give themselves special treatment. Neither our state constitution nor the federal constitution require that we create entities that have become so powerful that they can skew policy in their favor at the expense of actual humans. As Justice Byron White said, unfortunately this was in a minority opinion, but Justice Byron White said, the state need not permit its own creation to consume it. SB 2471 does not overturn Citizens United that has let corporations and other state-created artificial entities run roughshod over our political process. It will, however, reduce the flow of money into campaigns and will make the source of the money that does come in clearer because a real human will have to donate it, not a dummy corporation that is dissolved as soon as the expenditure is made. Act 11 has gotten national attention. Other states are gearing up to try similar bills or ballot initiatives. Personally, I've been contacted by legislators from Tennessee, Oregon, and from a labor union in Connecticut. And I'd be a little surprised if Act 11 or a similar effort does not end up eventually in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. That's the end of my comments. So thank you so much for your attention, and if you happy to answer questions if we have time and people are interested. Thank you.
I think Senator Rhoads was being a bit too humble. Act 11 was an enormous victory, and Senator Rhoads was very, very central to that victory. So I think we owe him a round of applause just for that.
I did say it was the most important bill I'd ever worked on.
That's
so.
true. It's one of the most important bills that passed in the entire United States this year, so amazing. So next is, we have just a brief interlude between Senator Rhoads and Judith Wong, and it's a video from a project that Hawaii J20 has called Stories from Hawaii. So our motto is, many people think that the Trump administration's policies don't impact us here in Hawaii, and we produce stories that show you otherwise, one story at a time. So this is a story that some members of Hawaii J20 put together.
I recently became a U.S. citizen, and I have voted in every election since. I'm shocked at how many people here don't vote at all. In 2024, 35% of eligible voters in the U.S. didn't vote. Hawaii was even worse. We had one of the lowest turnout, just over 50%. This means almost half the people here didn't bother to vote. This is especially hard to understand, since they made voting by mail so easy and convenient here. So many people are upset and complaining about Trump. Why they didn't use their voice when they had a chance? I just don't understand why. There are many countries around the world where voting is not allowed for everyone. Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, women can legally vote or men don't permit them to vote. Or the results are fake, so dictators can stay in power. Honestly, the most disappointing thing is seeing how many young women don't vote. Women fought so hard for us to have the right to vote, and it's being taken for granted or just wasted. The policies this administration is passing are going to shape young women's life for years to come. We are so fortunate to live in a democracy, but if people don't vote, we all lose.
Great segue to Judith Wong, the president of the League of Women Voters in Hawaii. So Judith, thank you.
I really feel like I don't need to talk now. A lot of, first of all, thank you so much for both of you. You really covered all of the great issues. Okay? All right, here we go. Senator Rhoads is a senator for the state of Hawaii. Senator Rhoads is a senator from the state of Hawaii, and you're going to talk to Scott Nago pretty soon, and he is the chief elections officer for the state of Hawaii. They work for the state of Hawaii. I do not. I am a private citizen. I am here representing the League of Women Voters. And if you know the League of Women Voters, you know that we are nonpartisan. We don't endorse candidates, and we don't not endorse candidates. We don't lobby against candidates, I should say. But we do take a position on policy. And most particularly, we take a position on voting. We are an organization that was created to expand and protect the right to vote. It's in our name, and it is what we do, and it's what we still do. Now, you've heard a lot of what I intended to say, so I can make this pretty short. The bad news that we're looking at right now is exactly what you've heard about. The current administration is doing everything they can to suppress the vote. They've done the SAVE Act, they've done the executive order, they've done demanding voter rolls in order to purge voters. They've done redistricting, they have the proposed postal rule that's going to be a real mess if it actually gets through. They've threatened to send National Guard to the polls. They have threatened to seize ballots. Most everything that they have done so far has been stopped by the courts, but we don't know if that's going to continue to happen. And we also don't know that they're going to stop now. In fact, we don't think they are. The current administration is going to continue to try to disrupt elections and suppress the vote. So that's the bad news. And here's the good news. We live in Hawaii. And Hawaii is one of the most pro-voting states that there is. Your legislature, your governor, your AG, your elections office are all very pro-voting, and have all done lots of things to make it safe for you to vote. Some of the things that Senator Rhoads has just spoken about, the bills that were passed this time, as well as the legislature has passed vote by mail, and they've passed automatic voter registration, and these other protections for elections here in Hawaii. The AG has sued the federal administration over interfering in elections. The elections office here has a very robust process going, including testing of all the machines, including having observer corps that watch over the counting through the entire process, and strong safeguards through the entire system. As you just heard, they're also aware that they may have to adjust to things that come down the pike further on, and they are ready to do that. Now, some of the things that make voting in Hawaii so special and so good are we vote by mail. It's much harder to intimidate voters when you have vote by mail, because everybody can vote in the comfort of their own home, in the safety of their own home. It eliminates the need to stand in line for hours and hours to be able to cast your vote. Of course, if you want to stand in line, you can. It means that no one is going to change your polling place at the last minute and you show up and your vote doesn't count because you're at the wrong polling place. That's not going to happen. If you're anxious about whether your vote will be counted, then you do what Senator Rhoads said. You sign up for ballot tracks at elections.hawaii.gov, and you will know when your ballot gets in and when it is counted. If you don't trust the mail, somebody talked to me about this earlier, if you don't trust the mail, you can put it in a drop box. If you don't want to put it in a drop box, you can take it to the voter service center. If you want to vote in person, you can. And you don't have to wait till the day of the election. We have early voting about 10 days before each election. We'll start on July 27th for our primary. So you can vote in person, you can vote by mail, you can vote in the drop box. You have lots of different options of how to cast your vote safely. If you're not sure about how secure elections are, you can volunteer to be an observer. Some of you already have done that. And when you are an official observer, you watch the count as it happens. And you know, when you watch that count, that it is safe, that there are no ballots being thrown away, there are no ballots being added. You can see the process for yourself, and I encourage you to do that. So, what else? Well, the elections office has made it really easy for you to understand elections in Hawaii. So, this is my favorite sign. This is where you go. elections.hawaii.org to find all the information you would need to know. Where are the drop boxes? What are the hours and the locations for the voter service centers? How to vote if you're handicapped, if you don't speak English, if you can't write for yourself, if you are going to be out of the country for the period of the election. It's also a place where you can check and see if your voter registration is up to date and updated if that's what's needed to do. And on the front page of this website is the voter guide, which has the profiles of the candidates that are running, and when we have issues on the ballot, it will also have information about the issues on the ballot. So you can be an informed voter, and everyone around you can be an informed voter in one very easy to get to site. So I can tell you that it is, as of right now, safe and easy to vote in Hawaii. But that is not true everywhere. You have heard some of that already. I'm often speaking to League of Women Voters, state leaders, other states across the nation, and they really envy us. Some of them are dealing with legislatures that are already implementing ID laws that parallel the SAVE Act that you heard about. Some are worried about armed men showing up at polling places. Some are dealing with polling places that are intentionally made more confusing, more difficult to reach, or very overcrowded. Some are dealing with attempts to purge eligible voters from the rolls. Again, you heard about that earlier. Some have election deniers that have been put in positions that will be responsible for certifying the elections as they finish this year. We don't have to deal with that here. We have a government through the whole range of our government that has been protective of us. So do I think that we can now go to sleep? It's all done? No. I think the current administration is not going to quit meddling in elections. They absolutely will not. They will continue. I don't know what they will come up with. You've heard some of the possibilities, but I don't know what they will come up with. But here's what you should take away from this. Your state government has done everything it can to protect you and the right to vote. And they've done that in every previous attack that has come up, and they will do that again. So is it true that the people in Hawaii, that there are people in Hawaii who would like us to go back to voting on a single day, in person, with a citizenship ID, an ID that proves our citizenship? Yes, there are. Are there election deniers in Hawaii? Yes, there are. And they are very, very vocal. I'm not sure I would encourage anybody to attend, but okay, if you attend the Elections Commission meetings, first of all, get comfortable because you're going to be there for a while. You will hear lots and lots of noise about the elections, but that's what it is noise. We have really solid, good, trustworthy elections in Hawaii, and you can trust them. Don't be fooled by the noise. Just the fact that people say it doesn't make it true. So in addition to some of the really good suggestions that Senator Rhoads has given you of ways that you can participate, I'll throw in a couple more. Well, actually, I'm overlapping with a couple. The first thing you can do is vote. Absolutely vote. Encourage everyone you know who is eligible to vote to actually vote. Because when you vote, you are telling the federal government and every candidate on the ballot that you are paying attention and that you will not have the right to vote taken away from you. You can do lots of things to encourage people to vote. I was at a meeting the other day and someone was talking about, their niece had a graduation party, so she took voter registration applications to the party and gave them to all of the seniors who were graduating as their graduation gift. There you go. The second thing you can do is confront your candidates. So if you have a candidate who comes to your door asking for your vote, or you go to a candidate forum and you hear someone talk, or you have an opportunity to ask them a question on their website or other source, ask them, regardless of whether they are running for city council or federal position, ask them, what is their position on vote by mail? What is their position on the SAVE Act? You only want to vote for people who will preserve your right to vote. If they're not willing to preserve your right to vote, they haven't earned your vote. And then the last thing I will say is don't give up. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Even if we get through the primary, even if we get through the general election, it's not over. For at least 2 years, we are going to be fighting an uphill battle to preserve and protect the right for everyone to vote. And it is going to include things like making sure that the SAVE Act or some iteration that's similar to the SAVE Act doesn't happen. Because in addition to some of the things that were already mentioned here, the SAVE Act means you would have to go in person. I want you to picture that if you live in North Kahala on the Big Island, you would have to go in person, several hours drive, in order to update your registration or to register. It is not fair to rural people, it's not fair to women, as it's already been said, it's not fair to low-income people who don't have enough time to go do these kind of things. We have to keep at this, and we have to keep at it for a long, long time in the future. Until we have things like the John Lewis voting bill passed nationally, until we have protections that are back in place to take care of ensuring that people are treated fairly, that apportionment, that reapportionment is fair and honest, and that people have access, complete access to vote legally. So don't give up. Take a deep breath, keep going. The fight is going to last for a long time, and we will need everyone. We will need our legislators, we will need our Office of Elections, we will need our governors and our AGs, and we need citizens to keep the pressure on to restore the right to vote the way it should be for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. We have a lot of really brave and important people here with us, and we have one more. Gay, did you want to come and introduce our next and our special guest speaker?
I think he needs to be introduced again, because he's been mentioned many times, but it's Scott Nago, Chief Elections Officer. Before I do that, I wanted to echo what Judith has already said. It's really a time that courage is so important. So I want to just acknowledge all of you for just being here. Because even the smallest thing now seems like it takes so much courage. All of you who've been to a protest recently, all of you who've shared one of your stories with us, because you cannot believe how many times we said, I want you to tell that story because I'm afraid. I'm afraid. So, Mr. Scott Nago, as Nandita and Karl has, I think, mentioned, end of last year, he and other chief election officers were threatened with their job being fired if they don't share voter registration roll with the federal government. He didn't. And recently, he and other chief election officers again were threatened by criminal liability if anyone non-citizen vote. That's still being played out. Who knew that just doing this job would take so much courage? So on behalf of Hawaii J20, I want to give him a little award for being the champion for our voters' rights, for being the defender of safe elections and voting by mail, and also the protector of, what else did I leave out? Of the voter roll. So please come up. So beside your applause, will you chant with me? Go, Nago, go! Go, Nago, go! Go, Nago, go! Go, Nago, go!
So I was told I was I was told I was invited here to answer questions, so I will answer. But any questions you guys have?
Is this considered election interference?
No.
Actually, I'm gonna have you take.
If you want to ask a question, because this is being streamed, we need you to ask on the microphone.
Come to the front.
Thank you, all three of you. This is a really good session. My question has to do with how to help people who are in nursing homes, who have not voted for who knows how long. They're not on the ballot or on the election rolls. So how can I, as a citizen, or any of us, help them to register to vote?
So the easiest way to register, so we have the easiest voter registration methods in Hawaii. If with a driver's license or state ID, I know this would not apply to those particular population, but you could register with the driver's license state ID online. The form, the voter registration form, the forms are available online. They're available at libraries, post offices, the table over there. State offices also have the forms. So all they would have to do is fill out the form, answer 3 questions. You're a U.S. citizen, you're a resident of the state of Hawaii, you're 18 years of age and older. Fill out the form. It's self-subscribing. The legislature passed a law to make it a affidavit. And you just fill that out and turn it in, and you will be registered.
Okay, this one person in particular I'm thinking of, she doesn't know if she has a driver's license or a state ID. In the process of being moved to a nursing home, she doesn't know what she has, and she's not really able. I mean, mentally she's fine, but physically she can't get around. She does remember her social security number. Is that enough?
Yeah, so you actually don't need a social security number to register. You would just need, if she does know her last 4 digits of her social security number, that is it. If she doesn't know her social security number, she can register without a social security number, then she'll be assigned a number.
Oh, okay. All right, so it's just getting her to fill out the form and sign it.
And turn it into the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to add a couple things to that. League of Women Voters goes to assisted living and nursing homes. Anytime we're invited to do exactly that, to update people's registration and to help them get on the rolls and get their vote.
Hi, thank you for being here. And I got a shirt on. Obviously, I've been volunteering for a particular candidate, but this question really applies to any voter, regardless of what candidate they may support. And so I think it's really important for people to know about the difference between voting at a drop box versus through the mail, given what we learned from the panel about the ballot arriving on or by election day. So if one votes, say, by mail versus a drop box the day before and puts it in the mail, you know, is there a difference there in terms of they put it in the mail, into a drop box? I think there probably would be, but maybe you can explain. And second, where does one find the drop boxes if they haven't voted by election day, but they want to get it in before the deadline?
Okay, so yes, there is a difference. If you're going to vote by mail, if you're going to turn it through the mail, you need to do it. We recommend a week in advance because the law says ballots must be received by 7 p.m., not postmarked. However, if you take it to a drop box, that is picked up by the election officials. So that doesn't go through the mail. That's collected daily by election officials. So if you're going to hold on to your ballot closer to the election, to a drop box or a voter service center, don't put it in the mail because it may or may not get to the. And for a list of those, our website has a list of where the drop boxes are. Correct.
Hi, I got a question for Mr. Nago, excuse me, then Senator Rhoads. Do the chief election officers from every state meet periodically to do scenario planning for different ways different actors might try to game the systems?
No, but we do have what we call red briefings put on by, not so much recently, but we did have by the federal government put on, give us red briefing and analysis to let us know what the actors are out there. It's hard for chief officers to plan because every state is different and unique. Also, not everybody has the same rules and regulations or laws governing elections. Every state has its own laws. So it's really hard to come up with a universal plan because everybody's different.
Okay. So meeting periodically is of no use, essentially, because there's too many differences?
It's just to, there is a use, but it's not to plan for the election. It's more like best practices and things like that.
Okay. Senator Rhoads, I'm Thomas Brandt. I used to be a constituent, but you probably know me best from arguing with your old friend Bob from Indiana on your Facebook page.
Thank you for
Anyway, my question was based on the SCOTUS decision, which many are calling Citizens United 2.0, where they took the lid off of how much the parties can spend now. We have a Republican-Democratic duopoly in this country, for better or worse, right? I don't think it's a good thing, but I don't think anyone's going to unilaterally disarm, even if if we got rid of Citizens United, one, maybe, but, and I'm afraid the Democrats on the national level have been acting more and more like light Republicans since the 1990s in the wave of the Citizens United. It's the disarmament. What do you think can be done on the national level and the state level if necessary to, other than the law you just passed, right, to break out of this mutually assured destruction that we're in right now?
Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at other countries that, I mean, I think the countries that have most choices in terms of parties are generally parliamentary, and they also generally have proportional representation, and that's how you get lots of parties. I mean, there's pros and cons to that because you almost always have, not always, but you almost usually have coalition governments, and then you have to make compromises with people you don't really want to make compromises with. Just
They can call elections at random.
yeah, they can call, well, yeah, pretty much, not exactly at random, but yeah, it's different. You know, and that's a federal constitutional amendment. I think the other area that might help in that regard is ranked choice voting. And we do, it was my bill, it only applies right now to special elections that, I forget what the exact parameters are, but basically it was to avoid the Charles Dujou situation where you had two strong Democrats and a strong Republican running, and the Democrats split the vote, and the person who really was the third place finisher won. And then there was also a county council race out on the west side. I don't know if any of you remember Tom Berg, but there were like 30 people running in this race, and it was first past the post, and he got like 5% of the vote, and he won. So ranked choice voting would keep that from happening. You would get voted, you would get a representative from districts like that that had much deeper, broader support. I didn't try to go for full-on ranked choice voting because I didn't think I could pass it. So, you know, politics being the art of the possible. But I thought if people saw that maybe we could go from there. Well, we passed that bill like 6 years ago. We never had this situation come up. So just recently, like yesterday, the county, the commission that decides what's going to be on the ballot for ballot questions, they did put ranked choice voting on there. So we'll see if that makes it, but I think that would help in terms of diversity of, you know, whether that ends up in more than two parties, more than two viable parties, sure, but I think it would be, it can't hurt anything, put it that way.
Well, how do you feel about open or jumbled primaries
Thomas,
combined?
listen to other people.
ask a follow-up question. Related.
Well, the question was, should we have jungle primaries like California does, so it doesn't matter who, you just the top two go to the general, which, well, we sort of have those at the county level too. I did move a bill out of judiciary this last year that did that, and it was my Gabbard's bill. The caucus was not ready for that, and it died. So I don't know what to tell you. I'm not sure I was ready for it either, but.
Well, this is just a simple question on the elections and when all the ballots, do all the ballots like on one of the islands go to just one place, or are there several places where the ballots are collected? And then how many people does it take to actually count up everything? And then do you have keep a running count that is made public during the course, or do you have to wait till the end of the all the ballots are in and then you make the decision? Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I remember. So each county, the 4 counties all have their own county centers, so the ballots do get processed in each individual county or counted in each individual. They're staffed by volunteers, just like you folks. Over 300 volunteers, and we're grateful for every one of them, because without them, there's no way we could get that done. State law prevents us from tabulating results, so we process the ballots, we run them through, but we don't tabulate them, which is putting them in results form or tabular form until after the last voter has voted. So once election day, when the polls close.
How do you sign up to be one of the counters?
So you can go to elections.hawaii.gov. They're not manually counted. They are run through scanners. What you would do is open up envelopes and burst the ballots.
Thank you. I was actually, remember Ruby Freeman? I was one of the auditors during that time frame, and I actually saw where nothing improper happened and the horror that she went through. My question, and I have another one too, my question to you is, are there any safeguards? What helped us were the videos, rather than my testimony, because I did give some, but the videos that saved the impropriety of going after this poor lady. Do we have anything like that in Hawaii for auditors or whatever to protect the people that are working with the ballots? Or is it all automatic?
So, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Ruby Freeman, but I think I got the gist of is there anything to prevent impropriety or to protect people working from being accused of anything nefarious? And the answer is yes. We do everything in front of official observers who serve as the eyes and ears of the public. They're volunteers of the different parties, different organizations such as League of Women Voters that do watch over the process to make sure that we are following the procedures.
Just so you know, Ruby Freeman was from Georgia, and she was all over national, you may not know it, but all over national news accused of improper ballot. I'm not going to go into the details. Anyway, thank you for that. And then may I ask you, Senator, this is more on the federal level, but part of the explanation that you gave, thank you very much for that, still don't explain the total fear I see in our legislators. Some of the people, like their lives or their family lives, are at risk. And that actually is something that I wonder do you see that in the legislator or talk within the legislator that people follow the person in charge of our government now because of fear for their lives or their family lives?
You mean like Congress people, Republican Congress people?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
I mean, I think the answer is probably yes, but it's combined with political fear, which how many examples do we have? I mean, John Cornyn, who was a GOP senator from the state of Texas, been there. I used to work on Capitol Hill like 30 years ago. I think he was there then. A long time coming. Got beat in the primary because Trump told everybody he was a bad person. So but I do think there is an actual physical fear too. They're afraid. They know that if Trump says this is a bad person, they're going to start getting threatening phone calls and worse. And it happens here too. Every time, pretty much, not every time. Several times when I've handled gun bills in my committee, I've gotten death threats. So I'm not surprised that it happens there. But I think the other fear too is there's also and I don't think the Democrats really have the same sort of track, but once you're out of office, the sort of understanding is if you toe the line while you're in office, not only will we not harass you physically and we won't primary you, but when you're done, you'll get a lucrative, easy job and you'll have a nice, pleasant retirement. So I think there's really three things that go on at the federal level on the Republican side. Democrats, I guess we just don't have enough money to do that third thing. We chose not to. That's a better answer.
Good evening. As an American by choice, not chance, I would like to say thank you for what you're doing for defending democracy in the United States, because believe me, the rest of the world is watching, and they are incredibly saddened by what's happening, cannot understand why we aren't doing a better job of keeping our elected people accountable. Now, in terms of reading through the SAVE Act, and then this most recent version, the voter ID, that they're trying to get, that is trying to be pushed through, one of the issues that I hadn't realized is that it's not just about your name matching, but it's also about your address matching. So you can take in your driver's license, maybe, but if you don't have the right address on that driver's license, you're dead out of luck. So, Scott, I was wondering, to what extent are you all doing something, what's the coordination that's happening between the Department of the Transport when people change the address on their driver's license and the Office of Elections, because this seems to be something that could be really problematic. Think of how many people rent. So suddenly, it is only homeowners. It is only people who have everything matchy-matchy. And I think if we even went around this room, we would find, oh my goodness, actually, my paperwork isn't up to date in some way, shape, or form. And so it's very easy to think, it's other people's problems, but it's not. So to what extent if we think about, I worked with the League of Women Voters on an audit with your office, you're doing an amazing job. There was no hand ballot audit, right? No difference, and that was a year ago we did that. I have so much respect for you all. So getting back to this issue of how do we deal with changing addresses. Thank you.
Okay, so as you know, ballots are not forwardable through the mail. If you do move or change your address, you need to update your registration, similar to your driver's license. So one of the easiest things to do is when you go into renew your driver's license or update your driver's license, you can update your voter registration address at the same time. It's simply checking the box of the form, and driver's license will pass that on to us to update the voter registration at the same time. And beginning next year, we do have automatic voter registration. When you do go renew your driver's license or or get a driver's license, you'll be automatically registered to vote.
But if you move and move like 2 or 3 times, looks like you said
Come on up for the mic, please.
So if you move 2 or 3 times,
yeah.
I believe you're supposed to update your driver's license. So in the process of updating your driver's license, you can update your voter registration at the same time.
Sorry for
I just wonder, for the incident that just happened in New Jersey, where they had mistaken voter registration, is that a possibility in the system here in Hawaii?
No, so that was not, what happened in New Jersey was not the fault of the voters, it was the system that New Jersey uses for automatic voter registration. Here we're constantly working with our partners to make sure that they're only forwarding us registered voters who are citizens and meet the requirements to be registered to vote. So that was more of a glitch, I would say, with New Jersey.
Can I just add that the exact same thing happened in Texas? So, of course, the press didn't make that big a deal out of the one in Texas, but in New Jersey, it's the end of the world.
Can I ask a question about that? Just a question. Hawaii has automatic voter registration.
Beginning in January,
And it goes through the process of applying for a state ID or driver's license.
State ID or driver's license, you'll be automatically registered to vote.
So because in the state of Hawaii, undocumented people are eligible for driver's licenses, and of course many non-citizens are as well. When they get, and I understand that there like it's an automatic registration, and if they're caught up in that, what protections are in place that the situation that happened in New Jersey doesn't happen in Hawaii?
So the federal law requires that when you register to vote, you answer 3 questions. One is, are you a U.S. citizen, yes or no? Are you a resident of the state of Hawaii, yes or no? Or are you 18 years of age or older, yes or no? And if you were to check no to any of those boxes, we would not get that from the driver's license. However, if we were to get that form, if you were to check no, we will not register you because our staff, the clerks are trained to look for the yeses or that attestation that they are those 3 things in order to register somebody to vote.
Okay, because I think a lot of people are very worried right now that they're going to be caught up in this kind of dragnet of people looking for non-voters, like non-citizen voters.
Yes, as long as you do not lie on the form. So lying on the form is a Class C felony, but if you answer it truthfully, it would not be the fault of the voter.
Isn't it also true that you can just opt out and say, I don't want to? It makes you make an affirmative decision, but if you just don't want to be involved.
So I believe currently that is the process, but come January, it's going to.
You have to answer the questions.
You have to answer the questions, and I think you opt out at a later date. No, the voter registration form will not change. This is more of when you go to the DMV.
Okay, I'm concerned about the chance of various types of disruption of the voting process, and I'm wondering whether you are doing planning for a whole variety of types of interference. So, for example, today I understand that the president and vice president were both talking about sending the military into democratic states to monitor elections. Do you have a plan for how to handle that? Let me take you off the hook. What I think is that some people, including you and probably all the people sitting up here today, and maybe some others, should meet with the governor and urge him to deal with our police and the National Guards and work with them to prepare to be able to come out if there is some serious intervention. I don't think that's your job to do by yourself.
One of the things we do work with is our partners in law enforcement at the federal, state, and county levels to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as threats or outside interference. So we do have plans in place in case those kind of things happen. We've always had those kind of plans in place. I mean, the counting center where we count the ballots is secure. It's not an open facility where anybody can walk in. There's official observers there. For those of you who are official observers, you do know that we take security very seriously.
Well, yeah, I don't mean that, but I also mean at the voting places.
Yes. So one of the things we do is we do meet regularly with law enforcement because we do have people who want to watch the box. But if they they would have to do it in a legal manner.
And do you have plans for if there is a bomb attack, for example, on a voting place or on the counting? Do you have an alternative place to go? I mean, I think you have to think, really, we are in a very serious situation at the moment, and you've got to have some alternatives on these things.
Yeah.
Let me jump in.
I was just gonna say that there's a lot of things that can go wrong in elections, and and those are not the highest of priorities that we would come up with a plan B for. I mean, we have a storm coming up, we have a plan B for that, that's more likely to happen.
Okay, yeah, that'd be.
I was just going to say that one of the advantages of having all-mail voting is that actually, if the federal government decided they wanted to interfere with the people standing in line, in our case, most of those people would be MAGA voters. So it would be an irony there. But that is one of the advantages of having mail-in, because it's harder, I think Mr. Nago already mentioned, it's harder to intimidate people when all you got to do is drop the thing in a box somewhere. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it won't happen, but there's so many permutations and possibilities that I doubt seriously we can plan for them all.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think there's some general types of things that need to be thought through, and that there need to be some sorts of plans for those things. So I would particularly urge with the governor to urge them to meet, if he hasn't already, to meet with the National Guard and the police chiefs.
So we do have those meetings with law enforcement for those kind of coordination.
Okay.
We do have meetings with law enforcement,
Okay,
and we do
yeah, the fact that
coordinate.
you have, that's good. Okay.
I'm glad to hear that, that you have those meetings. Any other questions? Nicole?
I would like to close it out. I actually met Judith, or I met you before, but we spent a lot of time observing the election, and I've seen Scott Nago opening the ballot envelopes at like 2 or 3 in the morning. So I encourage folks to sign up. I mean, literally there are observers in the van with the staff of the elections office when they go to pick up the ballots from the ballot boxes. There are locked cages, and we observe every time they open a cage, and everything is very secure. It's Republican and Democratic observers. In the gallery, when the counting is happening, there are media there usually observing. So definitely, I think if you have any doubts, sign up to observe. It's the best way to see what's going on. Also, I noticed one of the women asked whether or not you wait until everything's done before you announce the votes. And Scott said we announce when the last in-person voting center closes. That's usually at 7. Last year it was late because there was a long line at some of the voting centers. But that first printout goes up on the elections website, usually at about 7. That's not the final vote. It's actually what you guys have counted by then, right?
Correct. But for the most part, it's 90%. 90% of the vote. So I mean, in polling place days, that wasn't a big number. It was just the first readout. But in the vote by mail model, that is the big chunk of vote. But it's not the final vote. And if close races can change.
Yeah, one of them did last year. And so there's another vote usually later in the evening, and then I think the final is like a couple days later.
The final is 1 week later because voters can clear their ballot. So if your signature doesn't match, or you forgot to sign, you have until Friday after the election to remedy that.
Right. Our primary is always on a Saturday, so that's why we said Friday. So I just wanted to point that out. And now putting on my Harris United Methodist Church host hat. Thank you for coming. Thanks for your time. I just want to point out that, like League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan church, and we do not endorse or oppose any candidates. Just want to make that very clear, just in case this video gets online. This church does not endorse, and we are not partisan, and we do not endorse candidates. And finally, there's a lot of extra food, and it looks like people are packing up to go bags. So please take some food on your way out, and I'll let Nandita or do the final.
Thank you, Nicole. And thank you to Harris always for hosting us. So I think that I really want to thank the panelists because I feel personally, and I hope that you share my feelings, I feel that I can trust that the people who are in charge are taking the election seriously, taking the safety and integrity of the election, taking the threats to the safety and integrity of our election seriously. I think all of us need to take it seriously, and I think that Judith is right. We need to be in Hawaii, but we're also part of a bigger process, and in many other places the threat is much greater. And so I think that in going forward into the future, we need to start thinking about what solidarity looks like when we see the outcome of the midterm elections and what follows from those outcomes coming out of this administration. Just one last close. J20 is a voluntary, the pure 100% voluntary organization. We don't have a whole lot of money, so we're going to circulate a donation box. Just if you have any spare change, please don't feel obligated to donate if you cannot, but we would appreciate anything that you can give. So I think a couple of people are going to circulate donation boxes. Lastly, I just want to thank our wonderful speakers. I've really, really learned a lot today. Senator Rhoads, Judith, Scott Nago, thank you. I hope we didn't embarrass you too greatly. And thank you all. There will be a recording of this session that's available on the J20 website, hawaiij20.com, and we look forward to seeing you at our next forum. Good night.
Canada, okay.
We all say